Good afternoon. My name is Rabbi Reichik, Chabad Gaithersburg, Upper Montgomery County. I'm the Tuesday teacher for the class, so you'll give me grades when I finish. We're doing chapter 7 of Hilchos Yisod Torah, the first section of the Rambam, the laws of the principal concepts of the Torah. So I'm going to share with you, I'm going to do this as follows, just for my sake. I'm going to mute everybody, okay? And in case you want to say something, you can unmute yourself by pushing your space bar or whatever it is to make you unmute. You can ask any questions as we go along. We'll take interruptions as we'll take questions that pertain to the topic as it's happening, okay? So what we have today is the Rambam over here is moving along. He's the first section of my mind. Is Yesodei HaTorah, basic principles of belief. We know the 13 principles of faith. So you have them right over here, the 39 commandments. So it's the belief in a creator, God's unity, etc., etc. So then we have the belief that God communicates with man through prophecy. That's number 6. So that's going to be the topic of today's Rambam in the Mishnah Torah. He doesn't necessarily cover all of the 13 in this section of Yesodei HaTorah. He covers many of them. Other ones he will cover at other he'll cover at other places in the Rambam. But for today, we are going to discuss this element. God communicates with man through prophecy. And we're going to discuss today the regular prophets and the prophecy of Moshe. So we have here as follows. Nisei Adas. Okay, I don't know how you guys has been done until now, being that I'm number 7 in line. So you guys can tell me if you want to. Do I read the English and translate or whatever? Okay. So
normally, Rabbi, it's Hebrew and English.
It's Hebrew and English. Okay, very good. I'm just trying to do something here on my screen that will allow my screen to function the way I want it to be. Okay. Misoidei Hadas, one of the foundations of our faith, and we just pointed that out from the 13 principles. Leida Shakel Menaves Bnei Adam. That God conveys, makes people prophecy. Now, let's discuss a moment what is a prophet. Again, there's profits that you make in the store, and hopefully we all make profits in our business, but this is a different type of profit. This is a prophecy. And what is a prophecy doing? He's taking a communication from God and he's bringing it to man. In order to do so, he has to be able to be a little bit elevated from the stature of a regular person in order to be able to accept the communication from God. He's not an angel. He's a human being. It's exactly what we see over here, that God gives prophecy to man. That's the whole point. If we're speaking about, if we're speaking here about angels, that wouldn't be the case. We're speaking here about prophecy to man. But yet it's a man who's in an elevated state of existence, and hence he is capable of receiving a communication from God. In order to have prophecy, you have to be a wise man. Right? All these characteristics that we're going to express are characteristics of a person who is the whole element of a human being. He is of a high stature. Giber b'midaisav, he controls himself. His evil inclination does not control him on anything. So he's in total control of what he does. He does no wrong. He's constantly controlling his evil inclination. He's a very wise and understanding person. So it's not just that he has information, but he has a perception. And he has a perception, and he can perceive and he can understand things. A person who has all these qualities, whole in body, when he enters into the pardes. What's the pardes? The pardes is the garden of God, so to say, the spiritual garden where somebody has the spiritual ecstasy. And he will be drawn to these great, and he translates here sublime, distance, things that are normally distance from a person, but he's able to appreciate them, like a person who can be a Kabbalistic person. He'll have a proper mind to understand and to grasp and he's sanctified. He's separating himself from human beings who are following and going in the darkness of the time. That means he's separating himself from those from the people that have the world interfere with their perception of God. He's not doing that. He goes and he's zoriz. He translates diligent, alacrity. He trains his mind not to be focused on things of nothingness, nor into the things that are vanities, etc. His mind is constantly directed upwards, so to say, beneath the throne of God. Throne of God, again, is a Kabbalistic element. To be able to understand those holy and pure forms. And he tries to perceive and understand the wisdom of God Kula. From the original creation at Tabra Oretz until that which is translates the navel of the earth, the depth of the earth. From all these things, he gets to have a knowledge of God's greatness. What happens in that case? A person who's perfect in all these matters, so the Holy Spirit comes upon him. When the Spirit comes upon him, now he becomes similar to angels. The angels are called Ishim. The Rambam spoke about this earlier. There's different levels in angels. So the word Ish is a person. So there's angels that are similar to human beings. So here, that's a lower level of angels. And here you have in the human being, the reverse, a person who's elevated himself to a point where he now becomes like an angel, like those angels. Who changed to a different person. He's not the same person as he was. He's elevated himself above the other wise men, as it says by King Saul. It says by Saul, Samuel tells Saul, the Spirit of God is going to come upon you, and you'll prophesy, you'll be a different person. Let's take a moment to look at that verse in Saul, okay? So this is a story that Samuel anoints Saul. And you're going to go there, and you're going to go forward to a hill, and you'll meet a band of prophets, and before there will be different musical items, and they will prophesy. And the prophecy, the Spirit of God will be upon you, prophesies with them, and will be turned into a different person. Now, we speak about Saul, that we say, he was a head taller than everybody. What means a head taller? That his state was of a different state of being than a regular person. And that's why he was merited to be a prophet. Okay, well, good. Continue. Hanaviyim, Milas, saying there are many different levels. You find by wise men, you have different levels of wisdom. So to my prophets, Navi, Gadol Minavi. You find one prophet greater than the other prophet. When do they have their prophecy? So a prophet has his prophecy generally at night, in a vision at nighttime, or by yom or by day. After a deep sleep comes upon him. As it says, we read this a few weeks ago, when it speaks about the prophecy of other prophets versus the prophecy of Moshe, which we're going to get to later in this chapter. But he says, a regular prophet, God says, I come not to him in a vision, I come to him in a dream. Let's look at this piece too, because we're going to come back to this later as well. So he says, God is saying, if there be a prophet among you, I make myself known to a vision, I speak to him in a dream. Why in a dream? So again, here too, he's a human being with a greater sense of perception, but he's not capable of having a direct communication with God. That's above him. So he has a communication, but his communication with God is a muted communication. It's muted in the idea that that it comes to him in an off way, by night, in a dream, or when he's in a state, in a non-full conscious state, as Maimonides continues. When you have prophecy, the limbs tremble, the physical power is weak, they lose sense of themselves. And the mind becomes open to understand what he saw. As it says by Abraham, a great dread fell upon him. And says by Daniel, totally changed, I had no strength. This too, this idea of losing the capacity, the physical capacity, is also similar to what we spoke about before. We spoke about before that who becomes a prophet? A person who is separated from the ways of the world. He doesn't have the desires of the way of the world. He's elevated his state of existence. He can be a prophet. During the time of prophecy itself, he takes another leave of his physical state in order to be into the state of prophecy. Why? Because that physical state is a hindrance to his element of prophecy. Because prophecy is to elevate oneself and to have a communication with God. Number 3. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to ask at the end of any section. The words that they tell a prophet, they're mashal. So here's another element where the communication is, so to say, muted. It comes to him as a parable, as a metaphor. With the parable, God gives him the inspiration to know the meaning of the parable. Jacob, with a famous story where he goes to sleep and he sees a ladder, and angels go up and down. As it says in the Medrash, that these angels were the angels of different nations, and it represented the different nations that were going to subjugate the Jewish people. So he saw this image of the ladder, and there was a meaning to it. Or the creatures that Ezekiel sees in the beginning of the book of Ezekiel that we read on Shavuot. Or what Jeremiah saw, which we read a few weeks ago, the first week of the 3 weeks, that he sees a pot and a rod and an almond from an almond tree. There's a scroll that Ezekiel saw, and a measured element that Zechariah saw. So too with all the other prophets. There are some times that the prophet would tell the people the metaphor plus its explanation. Sometimes it only say the explanation. They wouldn't say the metaphor, because the message was the message that they had to convey. Sometimes the reverse. They may say the image without saying the explanation. Like we find by Ezekiel and Zechariah that they come along and they tell the people what the metaphor is, and the idea being that the people themselves, the people themselves would have an understanding of what the meaning was. Now, the next piece goes into the importance of joy. Remember, we just had over here, by the story of Saul, that it says they're going to have all these different musical instruments. So here too, we're going to speak about the element of joy, why joy is important for prophecy. The prophets don't say prophecy whenever they want. What happens is they focus, they concentrate, they're in a happy mood, and they seclude themselves. The seclusion is to separate themselves from what's going around. But they also have to have joy. Prophecy does not come when a person is sad, or when a person is lazy, is down on himself, only from joy. Therefore, those prophets, as we just saw in the story of Saul, they have all these musical instruments before them when they're looking for prophecy. And this is what it says by Samuel, the story of Saul, which we just read, that they are now prophesying. Meaning they're going along the path of the prophecy until they can actually prophesy. So they're isolating themselves, they're in joy, and with that they're they're ready for prophecy, even though they may not have direct prophecy. They may not be prophesying yet. Now, why is it that they have to be in that state of mind in order to prophesy? Why do they have to be in a state of joy? So very simply, joy is an expansive element. When a person is in joy, in simcha, they're outgoing. They are thinking broadly, etc., etc. A person who is sad is constricting himself. They're focused inwards. They're focused on themselves. Now, sometimes that is the case. A person, God forbid, is mourning. That is the situation. A person is supposed to be sad. But other than that, when a person has joy, and you're supposed to serve God with joy, it means a person joy is an expansiveness of the mind. What is prophecy? Exactly that element. That a person has an expansiveness to themselves. They're now getting a communication from God. Therefore, joy was one of these, leads into this element. Those who want to prophesy, those who aspire to prophecy, but they haven't not prophesying yet, they're called the disciples, the children of prophets. Even though they're focused, it's possible they will have a prophecy and possible not. Number 6. Now we make a difference between all prophets and Moses. All the things that we said in there. This is what happened to all the prophets earlier and the late ones. The exception is Moses. What's the difference between all the prophets and Moses? Because all the prophets are by a dream or in a vision, as we said before, not direct. And Moshe is saying prophecy. He's awake and he is standing. Moshe comes into the tent of meeting. He comes into the tabernacle to speak directly to God. He hears the voice speaking directly to him. All the prophets, the prophecy is coming them through an angel in between. Therefore, they see it as a metaphor, as an allegory. Moshe is not through an angel. As it says, I speak to him mouth to mouth or face to face. Right? So that's this piece right here. Not so is Moses. With him I speak mouth to mouth, in a vision, not in riddles, and he beholds the image of God. Meaning with Moshe, it's a direct communication. Right, face to face, he sees the image of God. He does no parable. He sees it clearly, without a riddle, without an allegory. What the Torah says, a vision and without any riddles. He sees it clearly. That's one point. That's one element. That Moshe is a clear communication. Number two, we said before, they're all overawed. Their bodies tremble, etc., and they lose bodily function. Moshe is not this way. And the verse says, as one man speaks to a friend. Just like you're not to hear something from a friend, you speak, you have a conversation. So too with Moshe, Moshe has the power to understand it and stand in his mind. Now, we have a famous I'm trying 1 second. Okay. No, this is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somewhere else. There's a point where, I apologize that prophets, I believe it's by Samuel. I believe it's by Samuel, where there's a verse, Madua ba meshuga hazeh. Somebody saw people prophesizing. Give me a second. If everyone can give me a moment, I would like to find that verse. Okay?
Take your time, Roy. Take your time.
No problem. Okay. I'd like to find that verse. But what this verse explains, that when the people would go ahead and they would have a prophecy, here we go. I'm sorry. I'm in the wrong place. Okay. It was in Kings. Okay. That they refer to a prophet over here as a Meshuga. Ma'abdua bar Meshuga hazeh. Why did this Meshuga person come? Why? Because he acted in a strange way. There's another place, I'm trying to remember where it is, where it speaks that the prophets, as they started saying prophecy, they took off their clothes. Why did they take off their clothes? Because their clothes represents their own state of mind. And they had to strip themselves away from their own state of mind in order to be able to have prophecy. Give me a second if I can find it. If not, we're going to leave it. Okay. No, okay, I can't find this. We'll leave it. Okay. So they have to strip away their physical state in order to prophesy. Moshe does not have to do that. Okay, now, by the way, let's stop a moment and explain this. Why was this the case? So we said before that by the prophets, the issue was that their physical state was a hindrance to their prophecy. So therefore, in order to have prophecy, they had to get away from the physical state. So either it's in a dream, that's one element. Another element is that their body stops functioning in its regular way. They have to remove themselves, isolate themselves from everybody, because their physical state was a hindrance to having a communication from God. Moshe refined himself. Moshe was in a refined state of being. Moshe's body was not a hindrance to his element of prophecy. His body was one. God, don't forget, what's our physical state? God creates our physical state. In our minds, our physical state, there's God and there's our physical state. We see them as two separate things. By Moshe, it was all one, like it will be when Mashiach will come. So therefore, by Moshe, his body was part of the process. It too was a godly creation. And therefore, his body was not, because he was refined, his body was not a hindrance to his prophecy. So all the prophets not prophesize at any time they want. They have to wait for God. Moshe is not that way. Anytime he wanted, he was inspired by the divine spirit and the prophecy, and he didn't have to have all the preparation. Moshe was like an angel, except an angel, in order to be an angel, can't be in a body. Moshe was an angel in a body. Why? As we said, the body was part of the process. He said prophecy anytime he wanted. Shenemar, as it states, this is when the people came and complained to him that they wanted an opportunity to make the Passover offering because they were impure. And Moshe says, stand, let's see what God has to say. And this is what God promised him. Because it says, as we're going to read actually this week's Parsha, Leich Emor Lahem. The Jewish people said, we can't hear from God, it's too much for us. So God told them, Leich Emor Lahem, go tell them, they should all go back to their tents. But you, Moshe, you stand here with me. All the prophets, like the Jewish people at the time of Mount Sinai, they had a divine conversation. But yet afterwards, they went back to their tents, back to their daily lives, like everybody else. Therefore, they had regular marital lives. Moshe did not go back because he could communicate with God at any time. He couldn't be with his wife because he had to be ready to communicate with God at any moment. And therefore, he was totally connected to God. It never departed from him. The Karnar upon of, and as we had in the Torah tells us, his face radiated in his Kaddish Kamalachim, holy like an angel. Number 7. A prophet is possible that his prophecy will only be for himself. To broaden his mind, to add that he now knows things that he did not know prior. From the great things. It's possible he will be sent to one of the nations of the world or the people. Like Yonah. Yonah sent to Nineveh. He may be sent to one of the nations of the world, or maybe sent to a city with instructions that they should better themselves. When he is sent, God gives with him the power of a miracle in order that the people know that God sent him. But not everybody who makes a miracle is suddenly a prophet. Why? Because maybe the miracle was a sleight of hand. A person that we see, he fits the characteristics of a prophet with the wisdom and with his deeds, as we spoke about before. He was acting as a prophet needs to act in a sanctified manner, separated from worldly matters. And then afterwards he comes and he shows us a sign. This guy makes sense that he's a prophet. And listen to him. It's possible a person can do a miracle who's not a prophet. Maybe the wonder has another reason for it. If he fits the category of a prophet and he performs a sign, we have a mitzvah to listen to him, even though perhaps maybe he's not a prophet, because we can take it on the assumption that he is. This is how we're commanded. Just like we come to court and a decision is made by the testimony of two witnesses, even though maybe they're testifying falsely, because if we know that these two men are trustworthy people, we accept the fact that this is their situation of saying the truth. Similar thing that says that which is hidden is for God. That which is revealed is for us. What's revealed for us is that this person is a proper person and he's come, he's made a miracle. So we can accept the fact that this is a prophecy and follow him. Man sees by what his eyes say, but God sees by what's in the heart. So we can accept him as a prophecy. Now, but doesn't that put us at a danger that maybe he's not a prophet and he's going to lead us astray? So for that, we have tomorrow's lesson. Tomorrow's lesson, there's limits of what the prophet can tell us that we're going to follow. If the prophet's going to tell us something that's going to challenge the law of the Torah, we don't listen to it. If he's going to come and say we don't have to do these mitzvot anymore, we don't have to listen to it. So those things are not within the purview of a prophet. The purview of a prophet is how to do the mitzvot, how to serve God, or a special message as to focus on these mitzvot right now. These are the things that you have to know. Then we go listen to him. But if he's going to come along and try to contravene the laws of the Torah, then we don't listen to him. Okay, guys? So that is today's lesson. If you have any questions, I'll take any questions quickly.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
as a prophet, he must to share everything. The meaning is when you have, this communication with God, his duty is to say everything, or he can keep.
No. The prophets they were given messages that they were told to give to the people. Okay? So it's possible there were messages that came to them that did not pertain to the people. We find it by Elijah. God speaks to Elijah, gives him instructions personally, not to give to the people. So not necessarily is everything told to a prophet is coming to the people. Okay?
So the people, when it was a message, and it was according to the Torah, and from this moment, everybody knew this person is a prophet. But you mentioned also it was people who was not on the level of prophets, and they were also practicing this kind of, you can say,
No, I didn't say that. I said there were people that were disciples of prophets that tried to get the spirit of God, but not necessarily were they prophets. But again, people that were righteous, upright people, right? It's a key category that we need to have in order to accept a person as a prophet. Okay? Do we
thank you.
follow?
Yes, it's
Okay.
really interesting.
All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll leave it for today. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah. Okay. Take care. Be well. And thank you for joining.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. Take care.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Give my best.